Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming tonight. You're at a city council meeting, and it is Monday, September 17th, 2018. We'll start with a roll call and determination of quorum.
Solomon, Modrick, Nordstrom, Drew, Scott, Drury, Laurenti, Roberts, Armstrong, Lewis. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. And tonight's invocation will be from former Senator Stan Adelstein, followed then by the Pledge of Allegiance.
I want to thank you all for inviting me this evening. This is sort of what Rapid City is about. This noon, it was Lutheran Social Services Founders Board meeting and planning for what's happening there. Tonight it's the City Council. Tomorrow night it'll be at the Synagogue of the Hills. And I'm particularly struck by the fact that Sam Crabb is in the room. He and I started kindergarten together. But the whole point with what I'm saying tonight was his mother was an incredible woman. They were a very devout Methodist family, but they practiced their Christianity. When the air base came to Rapid City for the first time, there were a lot of single men in terms of the number of people around, so occasionally there was a young woman who was pregnant and not married. And Sam's mother told those who said, well, they're sinners, don't worry about them. She said, these are our children and we will take care of these women. And that sort of was the first thing I learned about how Christianity was really performed. Tonight is the 8th night of the 10 days of penitence the Jews go through between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And you look over your deeds of the last year and you start thinking about how you're going to make up for the things that you didn't do right. I still remember when I was 17 years old and I walked out of the synagogue in Denver saying, I'm sure glad that when I'm grown up, I won't be doing all these kinds of things. I'm 87 and I'm doing different kinds of things. But this prayer kind of reflects, I took a few changes out of the prayer book. So let me begin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Blessed art thou, Lord our God, ruler of the universe. Our freedom of religion embraces both faith and action. The primary quality is action, for it lays the foundation of faith. The more we do good, the more readily we do to grasp the meaning of duty in life, and the more readily we show our belief in the divine, from whom stems that good. Good that we seek, we will find through a good heart and through decency, in respect and true fellowship, through truth and peace, the no that really is no and the yes that is really yes. O God of truth, deliver us from cowardice that shrinks from new truth, from laziness that is content with half-truth, from the arrogance that thinks it knows all of the truth. Because as we do, the doors of the chamber will be wide enough to welcome any who seek representative or redress. Thus, the lights of this chamber will always be so bright that nothing done or intended to be done is hidden. And together we'll say, Amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God.
Thank you. And now for the adoption of the agenda. This is a time when the council can adopt the agenda as published, or they can make alterations to it. Is there a motion? Motion to approve by Darla Drew, second by Steve Laurenti. All in favor of approval of this agenda, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And now, this is general public comment, a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the council on any agenda or on any issue not on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting on any issue not on the agenda, except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the council members present. We have a few speaker request form, and the first one from John. Can you help me pronounce your name? Eberhard? Okay. The podium is podium is yours, and you have 3 minutes, sir, as do all of the public comment speakers tonight.
Okay, which mic? Or it doesn't matter, I guess. My name's John Hebrard. I live in Red Rock Meadows. It is one of the darkest neighborhoods in Rapid City. Why? Because action's not being taken on this agreement of 2005 from the city to the developer, DKEA. We have currently 7 or 8 lights that are defective or completely out in our neighborhood. The city owns several of lights identical to these that are in our neighborhood. They are located in the Rapid City, or the Red Rock City Park. They also have lights out. I have tried calling talk to different people, and I get different excuses why it doesn't get done. Our children are walking, or will be walking soon, in the dark to go to their school bus. Some of the stops, the lights are out, non-working. One such light is kitty corner of my house on Troon Court that hasn't worked for almost a year. I would like to, my personal thing is, being a past board member of the HOA, is the city to take over the lights that are identical to the park lights so that we have consistency of having lights that work. The current developer refuses to abide by the agreement of the city. I am very disappointed in the city's non-help in getting this rectified. I invite the council members who belong out there or represent Red Rock to come out. My phone number is on the piece of paper, and I would love to have a call and take you around and show you the darkness of our area, a high-taxed area. I think the mayor and the council.
Thank you. And our next speaker request form from Sam Crabb.
I notified the mayor's office that I wanted to come tonight because there was published in the Rapid City Journal on September 11th that the proposed budget cuts would be, called it a budget axe, could hit the shelter, the Cornerstone Mission shelter. I would first of all state that I think the city of Rapid City needs to be complimented, as well as the people who have served as council members and mayors for providing support for the Cornerstone Mission, which is located at this time in the old City Hall. Over the years, I have made appearances at the Cornerstone Mission to assist in the preparation and serving of meals. And I'm quite well informed about the wonderful service that the mission has provided to our community. The proposal of Mayor Allender is to reduce the requested amount of $170,625 for the budget for the Cornerstone Mission, reduce it from that figure by $70,625. And I believe that's approximately a 40% reduction in that budget. I am concerned about how the Cornerstone Mission is going to be able to serve the people they do in this community, whether it be with temporary housing at the mission or helping them find affordable housing in the community, or it would be feeding them on a daily basis, so that some of the people who do not have funds to go and buy their own food or go to a restaurant have a place to go and be served good meals. And that is my reason for coming tonight. I told the mayor's office that I opposed the reduction of the budget for the Cornerstone Mission because of the need of providing for the people who benefit from those services. So I would hope that when this matter comes up before the council, that you override the proposal of our mayor and vote to continue the support for the Cornerstone Mission, or reduce the amount to cut those benefits by a more reasonable amount. That is my statement to you tonight.
Thank you. And now Gina Parkhurst.
Good evening. My name is Gina Parkhurst. I live in Ward 3, and I'm also the regent of the Black Hills chapter of the South Dakota Society Daughters of the American Revolution, also known as DAR. I'd like to thank Mayor Allender for recognizing Constitution Week by signing this proclamation. And some of you may wonder, what is Constitution Week? Well, it's the commemoration of America's most important document, and it is celebrated annually during the week of September 17th through 23rd. This tradition of celebrating the Constitution was started by the DAR. In 1955, DAR petitioned Congress to set aside September 17th through 23rd annually to be dedicated for the observance of Constitution Week. This resolution was later adopted by the U.S. Congress and signed into public law on August 2nd, 1956 by President Dwight D. Eisenhower. Today, Debbie Shelton, who happens to be the chairwoman of our DAR chapter's Constitution Week Committee, organized an event at the Founding Fathers Independence Hall exhibit at 4 p.m. today to commemorate the signing of the U.S. Constitution 231 years ago. A Boy Scout troop and members of Children of the American Revolution rang the Liberty Bell in front of the building, which was modeled after Independence Hall in Philadelphia. In closing, I'd like to thank you, all of you on this panel, for your service to our community, and good night.
Thank you. That concludes the general public comment speakers. So now on to non-public hearing items, items 1 through 47. There are no speaker requests on items 1 through 38, so there's no public comment here. We'll go right on to consent items 1 through 38. The council can vote for all of these in one vote, or they can choose to bring individual items off for individual consideration. So we'll go first to Steve Laurenti.
Thank you, Mayor. Items 24 and 25, please.
Lisa Modrick. And Amanda Scott.
Item number 21 and 33, please.
And Lisa Modrick. Are there any others? Seeing none, could we have a motion to approve the consent items with the exception of 17, 21, 24, 25, 28, and 33?
Second.
Motion to approve by Solomon, second by Drury. All in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 17, authorize Mayor and Finance Office to sign an agreement between the City of Rapid City and FMG Engineering for professional engineering services for Perrine and unnamed tributary drainage basin design plans amendment, Phase 2, in the amount of $146,196. And that was Lisa Modrick.
But I'll take it, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor.
Jason Solomon.
I move to continue this for 2 weeks per the request of our Public Works Director.
Okay, we had a second by John Roberts for that motion. All in favor of continuing item 17, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And now item 21 is to delegate authority to the Public Works Director for execution of standard agreement for utility relocation without regard to aggregate limitation of section 3.04.090. Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to approve and retain the floor if I can get a second.
Second.
Second by Laurenti. Go ahead.
Thank you. And I really just had one point because it is on here, but I just wanted the public to know this is being brought forward to streamline the process. This is to give the authority for smaller utility moves in order for the department director to go ahead and just approve those. The one point that I was glad to see in there is that even if there's a lot of small utility moves that are being paid for and approved by the department director, if the aggregate for the total year goes over the amount that normally the city council would have to approve, 50,000, that's okay because they're little projects. If there's a project that in itself, in totality, goes over the $50,000 limit, that would still come before council. So I just wanted that to be out there. So I'm in support of this because it makes government a little bit more efficient. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion for approval of item 21. We'll go to Chad Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a clarification, does this give absolute final authority to the Public Works, or can it still come before council as an appeal for this particular process? I'm not sure to direct that question to.
How about Joel Landine?
Dale or Joe?
What is the item you're...
Item number 21.
Question is, does this item give absolute authority to the department director, or can the decision be appealed to council?
The way I read this is it's authorization to enter into agreements, so we don't have to bring all these back to you. There's nothing that requires the property owner to sign the agreement. But if they're willing to sign it, this is a standard agreement that we would otherwise have to bring forward. And if it's over a certain amount, you're required to see it. So if it is for that purpose, then it shouldn't need to come back as long as it's for utility acquisition.
Okay,
And I
sounds
can
good.
see the Public Works Director is trying to speak as well.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, if I could add to that, this isn't an agreement between the city and homeowners. This is an agreement between the city, Rapid City, and utility companies.
Right.
So we'll be negotiating in good faith. If they don't want to enter into the agreement with us, they won't. That item will come to the city council then at that point.
Thank you. Clarification, thanks.
Okay, so we have a motion for approval of 21. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And that'll take us to item 24, to approve the 2019 through 2022 Transportation Improvement Program Final Report. Steve Laurenti.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'd like to make a motion to acknowledge the final report, and if I can get a second, I'd like to maintain the floor.
Second by Drury. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. If I may, I'd like to ask the city attorney a question on this particular item.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Joel, item 24 is a motion to acknowledge the Transportation Improvement Program, the final report. I just want to make sure for this item, and you can speak on item 25 as well, because I'll make the same motion, but I just want to make sure we're, as a council, not obligating ourselves to spend any funds at this point, that any spending would have to come back to the council related to these final reports.
That is essentially correct. I'm assuming that any of the projects done under this would be over the amount required for bidding. Now, potentially, if a project costs less than the amount and it was within the budgetary, the money allocated within the department and was reassigned, theoretically, the department could enter into an agreement for something. But assuming that the project costs are over that amount, then before we could engage in the project, you would need to approve it and authorize the bid.
So as a follow-up, just to refresh everyone on the council and in the out here in public, what is the maximum amount that can be approved without coming to council?
I believe for a public improvement, it would be $50,000.
Okay, very good.
Dale Tech.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. These items need to be approved, not acknowledged. Are shown on the agenda as being approved. That's the requirement of the MPO, that they'll need approval of those items instead of acknowledgement.
Okay, is there a substitute motion from Nordstrom to approve?
Second.
Second by Drew. Let's keep going down the line here. Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor, and may I just ask a follow-up question of Mr. Dale Tech, please?
Yes.
Thank you. So that is what I was going to, thank you, Dale, because that's what I was going to chime in on, because with all due respect to my peer, Alderman Laurenti, I tried to acknowledge a final report in the past, and I learned that we do have to approve these, and the primary reason to approve them, Mr. Tech, is so that we can actually pay for the final report. Isn't that why we have to approve this? Mm-hmm. It's to approve the report for payment.
Yes, it is to approve the report, and then with the STIP, it also is a requirement for us to receive federal funding as well. So that's the primary reasons that approval is required.
So that was the only reason I was going to chime in. Is I had also tried to make sure that we acknowledge it, to make sure to the same concern that Alderman Laurenti did, and that is that any expenditure of funds still comes back before City Council. So thank you.
Okay, further comment on 24? Okay, we have a motion now for approval of 24. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 25, approve the Rapid City Railroad Quiet Zone Final Report. Steve Laurenti. Let's go to Steve Laurenti.
I'll make a motion to approve. And if I may.
And a second by Darla Drew.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to voice my opinion on this a little bit. I don't want to stretch too far, but I just want to remind my colleagues that we're looking at some point, this would be a good idea for the downtown, but in my opinion, when we're considering increasing property taxes tonight and we're wanting to do a quiet zone in the future, seems to me we're sending two different messages to the taxpayers on this particular item, especially since I believe some of these items will probably be less than $50,000. I don't know yet, but my guess is some of the smaller things for the intersections for this quiet zone will be less than the amount that needs to come to the council.
That's probably not true.
I don't know.
By a long shot.
Depending on whether we do it by section or how we execute it, I don't know, but.
Well, just to give you a little bit of comfort, if we were going to try to do that, we'd have to spend less than $50,000 a year on this project, so it's not really realistic. So you're not obligating any expenses by approving the report.
All right, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, item 25, we have a motion to approve. All in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion. Okay, motion passes with 2 noes. Okay, item number 28. Acknowledge the Water Division presentation from Jeff Crockett. Go to Lisa Modrick.
Thank you, Mayor. I make a motion to acknowledge and like to retain the floor. Thank you. I just want to say that the report and presentation was done very well at Public Works. I hope we've had a chance to look at it. I want to let the public know that the item is also on the link. It's a great report that was done, and because water rates and some controversy went with that, I think this is another great place to go to see where your water mission is. Their mission is for our clean, safe water 24/7. It was a good report. It is a public report, and it's hands-on report, and it will help us all continue forward to make sure we're bringing safe and clean water today and in the future. So that's my acknowledgement. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to acknowledge, and the second was from Jason Solomon. In case you missed that, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 33, to approve the audit report of the City of Rapid City, the 2017 Financial and Compliance Report. Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'd like to make a motion to approve and retain the floor if I can get a second.
Second by Laurenti. Go ahead.
Thank you. The main reason I'm pulling this off is that there was no attachment when this went before the Legal and Finance Committee meeting, and so at that point, I was still looking for the document in order to review it. So I wanted to make sure, because it is now attached, and it has been for, since I think last Friday, since last Friday. There were a couple questions from some city council members as far as the findings, the weaknesses, and that are proponently always listed on the audit. Some of them have been addressed in the past. Our Finance Officer Pauline Sumption did respond back to the City Council, and I just want the public to be aware that the city did respond to all the audits listings of material weaknesses and significant deficiencies. I should let you just say this, and that they start on page 104 at the end of the report, and that they are addressed, and the processes in the Finance Office are tweaked and improved every year. Pauline, is there anything else I missed? If you don't mind, Mayor.
You summarized it pretty good. Honestly, they're repeat findings for the most part, except there was one additional finding. They tested a payroll in January of 2017 that somehow we missed getting it published, and that is not the norm. And so it was an isolated incident, and it's just, while it is against state statute, it's just not a normal thing for us to do.
Thank you. And then, Mayor, if you don't mind, just another follow-up?
Go ahead.
Thank you. There is something that's been ongoing on the audit for the last couple years anyways, and it's a difference of opinion between the auditors, and I believe that you said and stated and let us know and let the public know that we're taking that to the state legislatures to get clarification, or through the South Dakota Municipal League?
Correct. That finding, if you recall last year, they told us that our managed or our brokered CDs were not in compliance with state law. State law says that as long as your investments are in government or government-backed securities, that they are qualified. Our opinion and that of our money managers is that these CDs are FDIC insured, which point blank means that the federal government is backing them, and they're all within the $250,000 limit. So I'm not quite sure why the auditors are saying that they're not in compliance, but I am working with the South Dakota Municipal League. At our meeting in August, we talked about talking to the bankers and also to some of our legislators that are in the business to see if they will help us clarify the language in the law.
And then one last item is in the past, or I believe it was 2016, that was when we were implementing software. We were a little late on that one, and there was no lateness on the 2017 audit. We're back on schedule.
Correct. That was actually 2015 and 2016 that were late, and with the approval of this tonight, we will be back on schedule.
Thank you. I yield the floor.
Okay, Jason Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just to note that, I was one of the council members who raised the questions and that the responses to the audit report are now attached as well. So we had the findings, and then I believe I saw that we had the responses from the city attached just for...
Correct. So two things that are attached to the agenda is their summary, and the findings are included in there. They do not include our responses, and then there's one portion in the audit report itself that refers to the findings. Again, does not include our responses, but our responses are included on pages 104 to 106 or 108 or something like that.
Okay, thank you. I yield.
Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. Question for the Chief Financial Officer, please.
Yes.
Pauline, I was just reading the summary part of it, and the headline says that it's a summary of 2017, and we're in the third quarter of 2018. Is that the normal turnaround time?
Oh, yes. They come in June and July and start doing field work, and then we follow up on stuff, and we are just required to have it done by the 30th of September. This is very standard.
Thank you. Yield.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for approval of 33. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And we're through the consent items, on to non-consent items 39 through 47. So we'll open public comment on those items. We have one speaker request from Kent Haig on item number 45.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Appreciate this opportunity to address the council and the city. My name is Kent Haig. I'm president of the Freeland Ranch Development Company and also Haig Development. Tonight I'd like just a moment of your indulgence to address a few of the situations that I think are important and crucial in making your decision whether or not to go forward with the extension of time for the community development block grants. The handout that was provided to you, just for your convenience, also, not sure if I'm doing this correctly, if somebody has the technological assistance, is that? Exhibit A that I'm showing you, just to get everybody oriented, is the proposed Freeland Ranch project north of Rushmore Mall. It lies within proximity, very close proximity, accessible by foot, bicycle, and other means of transportation within very short distance to hundreds of jobs. Page. Exhibit B is a layout of Freeland Ranch subdivision, proposed subdivision. As a matter of record, I want to give just a brief history on this, and I promise as brief as I can possibly make it. But the location of Exhibit A, as we showed, this is the 128 acres that sits north of Rushmore Mall. And I would, as it says, and it has been said in the past couple weeks, and is on the agenda, we respectfully differ from the words lack of performance. Before anyone, anybody, any developer, city or otherwise, can turn a spade of dirt on a project like this, a tremendous amount of time, energy, and money goes into it. Specifically, the illustration shows something that is physically achievable. And you can't say, I don't say that lightly, because why draw something if it's merely a pipe dream? But this is the result of hundreds of hours of engineering time, layout time, geotechnical studies, other soil studies, topography, surveys, and design work, countless hours of design work of where to put each and every parcel to maximize its performance. And this culminated in the approval, the preliminary approval of the subdivision plan in spring of 2017. And that was the area you see largely pink with the yellow dotted line is the area that was approved preliminarily for the subdivision plan. In getting to that point, again, there's hundreds of personal and professional hours put into that, including of my own. The current status of that is not only, as you see it here, in the vision stage, as I call it, or the planning stage, but it also is something that is poised to go to the next point as additional points take effect. Number one is that there'll be a traffic study that is required before any other subparcels can be identified in the project plan. That's one of the things to come forward. What I'm here to address tonight, though, is how do we get together with this public-private partnership that we hear so much about? Affordable housing, everybody addresses and talks about the need for affordable housing. This administration has made that a cornerstone, and as did the one before it, and probably the one before that. And I really want to impress upon everybody the acknowledgement of that. It is our intent, still is our intent, to step up to that to some extent as a citizen, and as somebody hopefully in a position to be able to do this with the support of city government. What we decided to do is take a baby step in order to keep us, meaning us, you, my partner, and we, your partner, this public-private partnership, to keep us in a compliance situation with the federal regs under the Community Development Block Grant. So what we are proposing is in the far corner of right there, you'll see a triangle. It's a little over right at an acre of land, I believe. And what we're proposing is that there be two 12-plexes built under the development grant criteria. Only 10-plex would suffice, one 10-plex. But we're going to propose two 12-plexes that show, going to Exhibit C. The two 12-plexes which will actually exceed the CDBG grant requirements and also provide really the dialed-in requirements that community development has been asking for quite some time to reach that lower, even quite a bit lower than the HUD guidelines require for compliance for these grants. So this provides immediate access. They're in discussing it with our engineers in the past, and also currently in verifying some things with city staff. There is available water and sewer right in Mall Drive, and of course, as you know, Mall Drive is a great street. It's been rebuilt recently, so all the access to utilities is very close. That has been the largest impediment to making the big project, allowing the big project to go forward. It just takes a lot of money and funding to do that. Yes, sir.
I'm pretty confident when we get to this item, someone up here will give you some time to finish that.
Okay, great.
We need to get moving on now.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, there are no other speaker requests in that public hearing. And so we'll go on to Legal Finance Committee items, starting with item number 39, and we'll go to Laura Armstrong.
Okay, item number 39, Resolution 2018-069, a resolution of intent to take the statutorily authorized increase in property tax revenue as part of the annual appropriation ordinance for the 2019 fiscal year. The recommendation was to send to council without recommendation.
Okay.
Right.
Need a motion on item 39. Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make the motion to approve. Second. To approve the resolution.
Okay, got a motion by Nordstrom, second by, was it Modrick? Okay. Any discussion? Okay, seeing no discussion, yeah, let's have a roll call vote on item 39.
Scott? Drew? Nordstrom? Modrick? Solomon? Lewis? Armstrong?
Aye.
Laurenti? Drury? Roberts? Motion passes 6-4.
Okay, thank you. Item 40, please.
Item number 40, second reading of ordinance number 6281, an ordinance regarding fiscal year 2019 appropriation ordinance. The recommendation is to approve. All right, well,
Okay, we need a motion on item 40.
Clarification?
Point of clarification? What is your question?
Thank you, Mayor. So point of clarification on this one is, as it's presented tonight on item number 40, this includes, as written, Pauline, Mayor, if you don't mind, the mayor's recommended cuts.
That is correct.
And so the total to the general fund for 2019 appropriation? If you don't mind, Pauline?
$60,395,030.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, for my point of clarification. I'd make a motion, but now I've spoke, so I'll allow someone else to come into the queue. If no one makes a motion, I'll be back in.
Okay, Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll bite the bullet. Mayor, if I may make a motion to adopt the ordinance as presented in the first reading, as presented by the mayor.
The request is to make a motion to pass the appropriation ordinance as presented in August, the original presentation. Mr. Landy, is that motion in order? I guess it would be.
Mayor?
Well, I mean, you can amend the budget on second reading, and I believe there's an exception for the not having to go through another second reading for that. Changes to line items. I mean, essentially what it's doing is changing the line items back to what you had proposed in the first reading.
Okay.
So amending those, rather than go through and individually amending those amounts, one action to make multiple amendments to the line items back to the original proposed budget.
Okay, let's take that motion then, a motion to adopt the ordinance, second reading of the ordinance as presented in August.
Yes.
Point of clarification?
Yes.
I believe you had a second.
2 weeks, 2 weeks ago, yeah. Yep.
So point of clarification, this also increases the revenue back up to the revenue streams as they don't exist, as in August? The building fees are non-existent at this point.
And they were also in August, but that would approve an additional $203,280 in revenue from building fee increases.
All right, thank you for the clarification.
Okay, we have a motion by Nordstrom. Let's see if someone's going to second this before we go on. Oh, you did?
I did.
Seconded by Darla Drew. Okay.
Mayor,
Motion and a second.
Do I still have the floor?
Sure.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out to the council and to the public that the items presented at the August 28th meeting that We saw it as something like a $2,300,000 that was, pull up my page, yeah. Basically $2.5 million off of one page here. I wanted just to say that there is a misinterpretation of that data, and there's some additional data points that need to be examined with this. And that's the primary reason why the extra $200,000 was being advocated to be cut from this reading of the budget, which I do not support. But I will support the additional increase in the building permit fees if that, or as presented in the first reading of the budget, because of these discrepancies that I've been reading through and looking at all of these numbers, because there's several pages that follows this first page that we got to see the numbers for on that, and it shows that there's a considerable amount of offsetting being done by the commercial developers versus the residential developers. So a lot of the money that you see in this line item is also picked up by the commercial folks that are doing development out there. So the other data points that I've looked up and tried to find on this is that there is several other points in this data that I was looking at, is that the building inspections that are happening with residential is not matching up with the information that we're being provided with the home builders. So unfortunately, that's another point that I'm not seeing the same data as provided by three different sources. One is the city, one is through the Black Hills Home Builders, or excuse me, the Black Hills Realtors Association, and the other one is another website over there that shows primarily a lot of houses that are over 200,000 that are getting constructed now. And I only saw two homes that are getting constructed underneath of the $200,000 bracket. So the data just isn't lining up, and I hope we get a chance to actually examine this and go through it a little bit deeper in detail. So that I will yield at this point.
Lisa Modrick.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to talk quickly on this one so that I can come back and talk longer later. I just want to break this down. Our $203,000 that we're working with on this motion on the floor is a breakdown of $16,917 per month, or $563 per day. I really think that we can look at, through, as the mayor had recommended, reviewing the permit process. We've been reviewing our permit processes all the way across the board, whether it's Parks and Recs or many of the departments, and making adjustments for funding that we haven't done based on our permits and bringing it up to core value on today's dollar. But that breakdown, I would think, wouldn't break the bank if we do this properly. I think the reservation of the council, and I do want to make this fast so I can come back again, but the reservation was I don't believe we had enough data or information that showed where the permits are going to come from and how they're going to hit, without really the roundtable discussion of the industry being at the table to formulate this. So if I can take it back now to the August discussion, you made the statement clear to us, this can be done after we push this forward. We have until December 31st. So, Mr. Mayor, if I could just ask you if you would clarify that, and then I'm going to shut down so I can save my voice for another moment. Thank you.
Yes, we can. If this motion were to pass with an additional $203,000 in revenue from the building permits, we would have until December 31st to shore up that funding source. If the council were to deny the permit change, we would, through a supplemental appropriation then, change the budget revenues to make the budget balance. So that is procedurally, it may seem a little awkward, but it's completely legitimate. Okay, Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a substitute motion to approve the 2019 appropriation budget as presented with the recommendation of the mayor's cuts. If I can get a second, I'd like to retain the floor.
Okay, substitute motion to approve as of today.
Correct.
Yes, and a second from Laurenti. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. So the reason I'm in support of this is that and I've already kind of alluded to it when I was asking for points of clarification. To me, if the council hasn't already approved an increase in fees, granted it is a budget and it's just being thrown out there, but I would think that it would be very insincere to throw those fees back in as a revenue stream and then say everything that the mayor has recommended to be cut is back in the budget for a line item. And then if the council doesn't approve the fees to get that extra $203,000, the mayor's already indicated what he's going to cut. So those entities, in my mind, would not have a fair idea, and they'd kind of be stuck in the middle someplace because you're still on the chopping block if the city council hasn't approved the building fees. So I'm looking at it on the other end, that if we approve this as is, the mayor's already made the recommendation of what he would recommend be cut, then let the council go through the building fees, and as we put a revenue stream back in place, we can take a look at those cuts and then do an appropriation to put those things back in the budget based on what the city council does. That's kind of where I'm coming from, because I'd rather have the public know what is currently funded, what potentially needs to be funded, and if the funding stream can come up. The other reason I'm saying that is the mayor did provide us some other information, and it's not a line item budget, so we're not in the weeds. We don't necessarily want to get into the weeds, but the mayor presented what the departments requested in the general fund for 2019, and then he presented what his recommendation for the budget was. And the piece of the data that I wanted, and I asked our finance director what it was last year's budget. So last year's budget, as budgeted, was for the general fund, was $60,373,726. The mayor's budget before this cut was at $60,529,547. Reducing the mayor's recommended cuts now still leaves us at $60,395,000, which granted is a minimal, $25,000 increase over last year's budget, but in my mind, that's not a cut. That's staying the same. Granted, you can argue over cost of expenses going up and everything else. But when we're all talking about cuts to the budget in the general fund, departments may have been, the shuffling of money from departments for priority-based budgeting might have been turned around. But when I look at what was budgeted for last year versus what is being proposed to be budgeted tonight by the mayor's cuts, it's the same budget. So that's where I would rather not go back and try to make up a fake revenue stream, but let's work towards that revenue stream. We already know what the mayor has recommended to cut, and then we can make the decisions if we can find additional revenue to then make an appropriation. In my mind, that's the proper way to do it. Everybody knows where they stand today, rather than saying you're funded for something and then pull the rug out from underneath you later on. So, thank you.
Darla Drew.
I would support the initial recommendation or motion by Richie Nordstrom. I think that those that can pay should pay. It's uncomfortable to be asked to spend more for your construction, but it's the right thing to do. We don't put this burden on our least able to pay citizens. That's why I can't support that. Also, I have some figures here, and we always hear about this unicorn called affordable housing. And this actually shows me, as put together by the budget person, Sean, but what it shows me is that for a $100,000 house, the proposed permit fee is actually down $89.50. For a home of $125, and I think these are affordable houses, as I would call them, it's down $39.50. For a home of $150,000, it's up $10.50 for a home of $175, it goes up $60 to $60. I don't know. That seems reasonable to me. That seems doable to me. That seems like it's something that the construction industry could absorb and go ahead with. Now, those higher income things, yeah, they get up there. There's no question about it. If you're going to build something for $300,000, it's going to cost you, let's see here, $310 more. So I understand that. But for what I'm trying to accomplish with affordable housing and balancing a budget while looking at the other organizations that are going to be penalized because we couldn't come to some kind of an agreement on this budget, I cannot support the amendment, the substitute motion that Amanda Scott has proposed. I would like to see this go forward with the equitable budget that the mayor proposed first. And these figures actually support that we can go ahead with this motion, you know, to go ahead and just reinstate the construction fees. So once again, I just need to say, those that can pay, it's not happy, it's not wonderful, I don't want to pay more, but if you can, you should. And the people that can't should not have to bear the brunt of this. Thank you.
Laura Armstrong.
Thank you. About a year ago, we were introduced to the fact of the priority-based budgeting, and I believe everybody on this dais participated in that survey, and then we sent out a citizen survey as well. What came out to the top of that, my understanding, was public safety, correct? Okay. So when I look at the supplemental cuts that were recommended, I do appreciate you digging deeper and looking for those, but I look at the Rapid City Fire Department for $50,000, and if we look nationally or even regionally, we see that there's forest fires everywhere. Forest fires do not acknowledge city limits, so I get concerned there. That's public safety. When we look at the Cornerstone mission, at an over $70,000 cut, and we've had loss of life this past winter, which affected the mission. That's public safety. When we look at the Humane Society, one rabid animal, that's public safety. So if this is truly, if we're moving towards a priority-based budget and public safety is something that we can all agree upon, I take issue especially with those three factors. I would be in favor to go back to the original proposed budget that the mayor came up with the first time around. I am not comfortable with eliminating these funds. It's just not right. Thank you.
Okay, back to Lisa Modrick for 3 minutes, 30 seconds.
Thank you, Mayor. I need clarification. Can I make a substitute motion on a substitute motion on a motion? I've never done that before.
I think you could have another substitute motion.
Thank you. So my substitute motion is to remove from the current motion the $70,625 of the Cornerstone Rescue Mission, putting that back into our program, as well as the Humane Society, for $4,375, which would be approximately $75,000 back in, and allow that $75,000 to be spread over the permit fund, so that it is it's a mutual reduction and increase at the same time. So if I can clean that up, put the $75,000 back in, and then take it from the first motion, which is back into permits.
Point of order, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, what's the point of order?
I'm not sure we're allowed to procedurally have three substitute motions. Is that correct? Can we?
I know in the past we've limited the substitute motions, and it's certainly going to get confusing. Like by going back to the original budget proposed, that money already had been put back in the budget. Those cuts weren't being approved.
I'm not sure that was the intent of her motion. As I heard it, her motion would be to pass the budget with just these two exceptions, Cornerstone Rescue Mission and Humane Society, and then to find a smaller increase in building permit fees to make up the 75,000.
You got it. It's a compromise.
It's not the
Exactly what it
same,
is.
it's not the original motion, it's a unique motion.
Thank you.
But at some point, perhaps it would be wise to vote on a motion and remove
Absolutely.
it rather than keep piling on substitute motions. Well,
This one can be done. Is there a second? Second by Laura Armstrong. Okay, you still want to talk on this one?
I can.
We got somebody new, John Roberts. John Roberts, floor is
Somebody
yours.
new. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. May I ask a question of our city attorney, please?
Yes.
Joel, since this is something that came before the council before and we voted it basically out of this budget, and now we're adding it possibly back into the budget, but there was no notice for anybody that spoke the first time on it, are we going to get ourselves into any legal predicament over that?
I don't believe so, because they understood the budget was still up for discussion. So just because it was taken out until the final approval, it's all the expenditures and revenues are up for debate and amendment until the budget's finally approved.
Well, thank you very much. Okay, I'm not sure that I agree with that, but you know, one of the things that worries me about this is the fact that we're already taking an action that we moved on, and now we're going backwards on that action. I think we're going to end up, and this is my personal opinion, but I think we're going to end up in a lawsuit over this. I think that it's something, I really do. I mean, I think that, you know, you talk about affordable housing and, you know, it's not going to affect the $100,000 house. There hasn't been a $100,000 house built in Rapid City in 10 years, you know? So, you know, $100,000 houses, yeah. Richie, go ahead and tell me how many they're built. I do this for a living. The cheapest house that I know of, new home that was built in the last 2 years, was $159,000. Now, if you're talking about assisted with some of these programs like Habitat for Humanity or somebody like that, that's different than being on the private sector. But in the private sector, there is nothing at $100,000 being built. So anyway, because you can't. I mean, first of all, you're looking at 40,000 plus lots just to start out with. And the construction, the cost of materials now has gone through the roof in the last 12 months. So, but that's a different point. The point is, you know, we're walking back something that I thought we had already agreed on. I don't think it's the right way. I don't think because somebody can afford it, we should stick them to it. I mean, yeah, I see that we're cutting 70,000 out of the mission, which 2 years ago we weren't giving them anything out of the general fund. And there's other ways for them to find monies if they need monies. You know, I find this, you know, I had to take it a few years ago when they took the money out that the city was giving to the Front Porch Coalition, you know, for suicide awareness and for people that, you know, and we had to find our money from somewhere else. But, you know, that's what it is. If you don't have the money, you don't have the money. And you have to find somewhere to cut it from. You know, and the thing that bothers me so much about government is if we don't have enough in this budget, let's find somebody that we can take some more money from. You know, and we've already have got, in my opinion, too slow of an economy in Rapid City as far as building. You look at Somerset, you look at Box Elder. Box Elder is the fastest growing city in South Dakota for its size. You know, and there's a reason for that, sitting right next to Rapid City. Because it's easier to build, because land is cheaper, that's part of it. You know, but you still have the problems that you have in Rapid City with bad soil and blah, blah, blah. But it is cheaper to build there. That's why they're building there. $1,000 makes a big difference. $1,500 makes a big difference. Just because somebody can afford it, that's not a good philosophy to have. I mean, you have that philosophy, you go down the line, you go into, especially and get into commercial, let's really stick it to these guys because they can afford it. What does that do to your economy? It tanks it. So I cannot support this. I thought this was something that we'd agreed on before, you know, and we asked the mayor to come back with cuts. We don't like his cuts. It's too bad. You know, I mean, the cuts are cuts. So thank you.
Pauline Sumption wants to weigh in here. Probably doing something wrong.
No, I was just going to do a point of clarification. If you vote this in, all it does is add the money to the budget. Honestly, it's not like the fees will raise tomorrow. You still have to pass 2 readings of the ordinance to change the fees. So tonight is not changing the fees. I just want you guys to know that, so that way if they do bring an ordinance forward, the builders can be here for those 2 readings and still voice their concerns. This is just for budget purposes at this time. Granted, if it doesn't get passed, then we probably will have to come back to the drawing board here, but I just wanted to make that clarification point.
Okay, good point. Now we'll go to Chad Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't even know what I was going to talk on anymore. I've had so many different motions, but I think reiterating the fact that Amanda Scott started off at the very beginning quite eloquently at the beginning of the conversation with the point is the mayor's already kind of more or less not even tipped his hat. He's showing us his hand what he's going to cut if we don't approve this. So I think we're just kind of, you know, more or less. I mean, there's no point in voting against it because it's going to happen anyway. So if he has to make the cuts, he's got to make the cuts, and that's the job that has to be done. So and then getting back to the whole building thing, yeah. It's $300 here, $200 there, but by the time it gets to consumer, that's not $200 or $300 anymore. It's a lot more than that. It multiplies pretty quickly as it goes up through the process. So affordable housing obviously is something that's very important, and I don't think we've been doing a very good job of addressing it personally. And I think this is a step to show that we are truly for affordable housing, and so I will be supporting Amanda Scott's original motion going forward. Thank you.
Okay. Steve Laurenti, I believe, is next.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm taking a deep breath here so I don't say anything I shouldn't say, or maybe at least I can rephrase it so that it sounds better than what I'm thinking.
Oh, time.
I just want to say that some of these motions, honestly, after what we went through with the budget hearings, I don't even know why we had budget hearings, honestly, because I don't remember what the vote was on taking this out of the budget, but I believe it was like 7-2 or 6-3.
5-4.
Okay, so those 5 people who voted for it, where are you at? If you're here tonight, need to hear from you tonight, because I know we're missing somebody that probably was not at that budget hearing that would have supported taking that out, and that individual's here tonight. These motions, and I'll be honest, I don't like some of the cuts as well, especially the Humane Society. They provide a direct service, which is a public safety item, and so is fire. But my opinion is that some of these cuts are by design because they are unpopular. I made comment that I had hoped that these cuts would be from non-critical services. And I thought, and I think a lot of us on this council thought that that's exactly what we would get. But I believe, this is my opinion, that this is by design to try to strike particular motions that we're seeing tonight. And to me, it smells like male bovine excrement. It is disgusting. We all agreed that we would not have this in the budget, and here we are trying to re-engineer this budget back to what the mayor presented to us. That is not what we approved at the budget hearing. I believe that Alderwoman Scott had it right. And this is something we attempted to do last year, taking out undesignated cash. This government doesn't get how to live within their means. I've demonstrated many, many times the amount of revenue, and not one person on this dais has refuted that. Over the last 10, 12 years, we have averaged more revenue in property tax and sales tax revenue to exceed 4%. Imagine citizens getting 4% increases every year and coming in and saying, you know what, it's not enough, I need somebody else's money, because that's what we're doing on this dais. It's ridiculous. We need to live within our means. Bottom line, we're getting great revenues. Now, granted, the last year or so has been tight. Well, that's what government needs to do, tighten its belt. I encourage my fellow council members to defeat this attempt to pass the original budget, which our budget hearings did not accept, and get back to the budget that is on the agenda. I yield.
Amanda Scott for a minute and 15 seconds.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make a point on this latest motion, which is to partially put in a revenue stream and partially put in 2 of the mayor's recommended cuts to offset each other. I'm not in favor of that because I am still in supportive of not putting a revenue stream in the budget that is non-existent in my mind. And so I do want to recommend and let my fellow council members know that we asked the mayor to bring back recommended cuts. So if somebody has a heartache about some cut that the mayor is proposing and you want to put it back in the budget, I could probably support that if you name another cut. But I am not in favor of putting in a revenue stream that in my mind is non-existent today. Thank you.
Richie timed out. Lisa spoke twice, but I think your second one was just a motion. I don't know if you... Okay, someone want to give these 2 people their
Point of
time?
order again, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry?
Point of order again.
Yes.
Is it 5 minutes per motion or 5 minutes total?
5 minutes per item.
Per item?
Per item.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. All right, Richie Nordstrom, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to remind the council that the information that was sent back to the council, to the mayor to do some additional cuts is not accurate information. That's the reason why I'm supporting the first motion, because what we told the mayor to go back and cut, $200,000 additional from the budget, was based on irrational arguments. It was not accurate. And some of the other things that were addressed to me personally was that how many houses were built. I've got the data here that shows it from 2013 to 2018. How many houses in what category were built. And we do have affordable housing built, but very limited number. Anything less than $100,000, there was 58 built. I can break down the other brackets, but the other time is 100 to 125,000, there was 65 homes built. 125,000 to 150,000, 176 homes were built. But let me jump up to the above 200,000. There's over 412 homes that were built. So when we're talking about affordable housing, it's not happening. It's just not happening. Even in the real world, it's not happening. But more than 200,000 is being built out there right now. I've also got the data that shows the houses that are being sold on the market right now that I consider somewhat affordable. There are some out there. So, again, Council, this information that was sent back to the mayor to do the cuts is inaccurate, not current. It's out of date and fully not recognized or vetted through that process. So I just can't support something that's told to the mayor to cut his budget, or our budget additionally, based on inaccurate information. And I hope we get a chance to vet it further. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Becky Drury.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to reiterate what Amanda Scott said is I am not for voting for something that we don't have that funding for, which would be the building fees. We don't have that funding. So I can't vote for anything that says we're funding it. So I'm in support of the motion where we do not have the building fees in there and accept the mayor's cuts. And I know it's hard to have, quote, cuts, but again, we need to think that a couple of years ago, the Humane Society was not, or the Cornerstone Mission was not receiving funding from the city, and I think they have other funding opportunities available. And I think they just need to seek those out. I think they're there. And so I would not support any motion that takes in the building fees. Thank you. I yield.
Jason Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a tough decision. It's really tough because you feel like you're taking away one to give to the other. That's, I suppose, the nature of what government is. I am tempted by Alderwoman Modrick's motion. However, I don't think I really am comfortable with changing horses midstream on this. The reason I'm tempted is because I believe the Cornerstone Rescue Mission and the Humane Society serve critical and important functions to our city. I'm very grateful for the Cornerstone Mission and all that they do serving our homeless population, which serves our entire community. And my hope is, it's really tough to be dependent on the city when we are tight some years. And unfortunately, my Public Works Department can't ask for more money from the community without raising taxes, but a nonprofit can. And that's what the position I feel like we're placed in. And so, my urging is that we would continue to support Cornerstone Rescue Mission as well as Humane Society. I thought Alderman Laurenti said it well. They provide a contracted service with the city that is very valuable and important. We have asked the mayor to propose reductions, and this is what he proposed. And my admittedly bad use of words in terms of saying slaughtering our sacred cows, and that was very harsh, and I said it was harsh at the time. I also said what I really mean is we might have to sacrifice things that we love in order to do what we have to do, which is what all families have to do. There are some years in our family I can give more. In other years, whether it be medical issues or whatever, we have less to give. And that's just the way it is. That's part of being a community, part of being a family. I'm going to repeat something I said in our budget hearings, if it's all right with my council. I grew up in a home with a dad who installed carpet for a living. We didn't have very much. My mom stayed home. And in middle school, or junior high as we called it back in the old days, I asked my parents if I could have a $5 a week allowance. And I said, all my friends get an allowance. Could I have a $5 a week allowance? And they thought about it, and they came back with a proposal for me. And my dad said, I tell you what I will do. I will give you 1% of my paycheck each week as your allowance. And so you will know that when things are great, you might have a $5 a week allowance. But when things are tough, you might have a $1.50 allowance. And most likely it's going to be somewhere in the middle. But the reason I'm doing that, son, is what he would tell me, is because you're part of this family. And so you will learn to celebrate when things are great, and you will learn that sometimes we have to tighten the belt, and you will understand why we can't get Cheetos or Dr. Pepper and some of the junk food things I always wish we would have. Because when you're part of the family, you feel it. When things are well, you feel it, and when things are tight, you're going to feel it, because that's what it means to be a family. Well, part of the community, and when we have these community investments, the community is a family. And so there are years that some of our community investments feel it, and we have some here today. I see Allied Arts is here, and Journey Museum are here. These are wonderful organizations, Wavy, a lot of wonderful organizations that receive funding that have already been reduced. What we've said is you're going to have to feel it with us this year. And we are very conservative on this budget, and hopefully things will get better, and other years will be a lot freer to do more. The last 2 years, I've been proud to be on this council and give hundreds of thousands of dollars to the Cornerstone Rescue Mission that a city council has never, ever, ever done before. We have given a record amount of money to the Cornerstone. And I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud that we're going to be able to give some this year. I wish we could give more. I wish that we could help more, because I believe these are community investments, because I do believe that this could help save us money in the long term. Contracting with Humane Society helps us in the long term because we don't have the staff ourselves. Serving our homeless population helps in the long term because that's less law enforcement that have to be involved. These are important community investments, and I want to signal and just say that our actions today are with the harsh reality of our budget, not what we think of you, because I see Cornerstone Rescue Mission. You do important work, and what you do matters. And I'm sorry that you're feeling the brunt of the budget, because we've been so generous the last couple of years, but some years we can, and some years it's going to be a struggle. And so I'm going to leave it at that. I have other comments about the building permit fees, but I'll save that. But I'm going to support the motion on the table, but it's not because I'm excited to, I'm very sad to, but we have to do what we have to do. And with that, I'll yield.
Okay, for clarification, the motion that's on the table is to approve the compromise budget motioned by Lisa Modrick that involves the $75,000 restoration of the mission and the Humane Society coming out of future building permit fees. Now we'll go to Lisa Modrick. Lisa Modrick.
I'm going to hold Jason to that one. We all heard it here.
Point of clarification. Original motion.
So just to recapture here why I'm going to make a call out to this council to do the right thing, and that is to put that $75,000 where it needs to be, and it is critical services. And we'll use public safety as one of them because it was mentioned, but our own police department had to take a cut of almost $500,000. So will they be able to absorb what the Cornerstone Mission can't because their budget cut is 40%? I think it will hit everybody very, very hard. And then it's the human factor. We've got to put the human factor back into this, and that is the vulnerable and the needy. And this is where a community absolutely feels the pain together, but we also have to feel the gain of the fact that we've got a Cornerstone Mission, and we have to keep those doors open. And the cry for the need is advancing, so bravo on the council for being so brave to even supply the Cornerstone Mission with funding that hadn't been done before, but the needs are growing. The police force is feeling it, the fire department is feeling it, our emergency services are feeling it, and so is the Cornerstone Mission. So is our cut, is our saying that you're going to have to give up $1 today actually going to be taught amongst those that are the most vulnerable? No, they're still going to arrive at the door. They're still going to be arrived cold, hungry, and perhaps at the steps of death. So we've got to do the right thing here. We also have critical services with our Humane Society. It's why I believe both of them need to go back in. The contract is with the city to take care of these services. It is critical services. What would the city do without it? We can't afford not to have it. Therefore, we've got to support it. Everybody else has cut. This is the reasonable thing to do. Permits is modest. I think it can happen. It's not going to hurt anybody, and we'll resolve that problem. So there is funding. The funding is permits. We've identified it, and I hope that you'll pass this motion. Thank you.
Laura Armstrong for 3 minutes and 15 seconds.
I'll be quick. So the first round of budgets that I went through the first year, I was concerned about the Front Porch Coalition and other things that were on the chopping block. And some of my colleagues leaned in and said, don't worry, people will step up, the public will step up and supplement, it'll be fine. It makes me very nervous. It's a gamble, and I'm not a gambling person. When we're talking about the Cornerstone Mission, when we're talking about the Humane Society and the other proposed cuts that were out there, I don't feel like we should be gambling with this. These are vulnerable people. These are vulnerable beings, and I just want to remind my fellow colleagues up here, we have governmental obligations. Yes, I understand that we have to be fiscally responsible. I get it. But we also have to be a voice for the most vulnerable. Before you vote, please take that into consideration. That's our jobs. Please don't take the human factor out of this. Thank you. I yield.
Becky Drury.
Thank you, Mayor. May I ask Pauline Sumption a question, please?
Yes.
Pauline, if we voted today to take the original motion that came from the mayor tonight if that came through, and then later, when the building fees actually, maybe they pass and we do have an increase in revenue, could we go back later in the year and fund things like the Cornerstone Mission or the Humane Society?
Absolutely. If you have an unexpected revenue source, you can supplement the budget with offsetting expenditures.
Okay, so we really don't have that permit funding yet. I mean,
Correct.
we don't have it, so it is a gamble if we get it or not. So, but if we do get it, we can go back and supplement them. And that would be my point. We can fund them at a later point when we actually, if we actually do get the money, that would be the point when I would gladly fund them.
If I might, Mayor, honestly, from my perspective, it's much easier to go in and add money to somebody's budget when you have that extra revenue that you weren't expecting, rather than putting the $75,000 back in, the fees not passing, and now they've already counted on that $75,000 and you're going to have to pull it away. That's my concern. It's harder to do that than it is to add money to their funding.
Thank you, I yield.
Jason Solomon.
Thank you for permitting me to come back in a second time. Just on the building permit fees, here, the issue I have is that we don't have that revenue yet. I don't want to spend something we don't have. If, and this is me directing to you, Mayor, my concern when this came at us initially was that there was not enough discussion with stakeholders. That includes community members, obviously staff and council members, some council members, to come up with a game plan. Because what I think we could do is say, could we make building permit fees even cheaper for 250,000 or less houses? You know, something to where we can incentivize affordable housing. But we didn't have that kind of conversation happening, and it seemed like because of how busy we were, lack of communication, and I have a hard time accepting a fee when I don't feel like it's been fully fleshed out. However, I am in favor of researching it and seeing if we can flesh it out and if come up with some kind of reasonable solution that is a win for everybody, at least, and at least is a little more fair to the development community, so they have a kind of a say-so and a voice in that process. I think that's important. I am in favor of going through that process and seeing what revenue comes from that. If there's revenue that comes from that, then we can explore whether community investments such as Cornerstone and a Humane Society, or perhaps the fire department, which I think is a critical service obviously a critical service for us. But if there's enough revenue there, what that revenue is going to be, I don't want to just say, let's automatically increase it enough to get to 203,000. I'd like to say, what do we anticipate that revenue would be? Now, where do we want to earmark that revenue to go towards? I'm in favor of that conversation, which I don't believe we're at the point right now to have, because that revenue is not at hand. I don't want to spend what we don't have. But if we come up with a proposal that has good community engagement and it comes back to the council, then I would look at that funding source and say, how can we best serve the community with these funds? And I'm not going to promise or earmark that to anybody, but I would just say that's a conversation I would be willing to have. But my problem was I don't believe we had that coming into the budget season. It made me uncomfortable passing it without it being fully fleshed out. So,
Point of clarification, Mayor?
thank you.
Yes.
Are we getting extra time? Because I believe Alderman Solomon, although you have very, very good points, what you actually gave him 3 seconds over as 5 minutes the first time he talked.
Well, that was an accident. I didn't write down how much time he had left. I keep a little scorecard here, and I had a blank, so my fault.
My apologies.
Now, Steve Laurenti for a minute 50 or so.
Or so. No, I'm hoping I won't need the or so part. I just wanted to reiterate and I guess encourage my colleagues to defeat the current motion on the floor, which is to alleviate some of the cuts, because ultimately these cuts can be determined from different cost centers. They don't have to be these cost centers. They don't have to be these cost centers at all. This can be determined at any point in time. It could come from any other cost center, and I would hope that the mayor would take it from some other cost centers, because I think the Humane Society definitely needs to be fully funded because they provide a direct service. They're not a charity. They're not a group. We had an independent accounting firm do a study on what the cost of that service was. It's not a charity. They directly provide a public safety service. So I'm hoping that we will have the revenue, and if we do, that the mayor will fund these critical items that he has identified as proposed cuts in this particular budget. I yield.
Chad Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to finish this up where we were 4 hours ago, whatever it was, and go back to, it can be more succinctly put than what Ms. Sumption and Amanda Scott both said about their points they made. I think we need to go back to the original motion that Ms. Scott was making, and hopefully we can move on, and hopefully at the urging of Mr. Laurenti, the mayor will look at other cost centers to cut, but at this point we need to get going. Everybody's got their points made. I think nobody really wants to cut the mission, nobody really wants to cut the Humane Society, but in the interest of moving along, getting this passed, and so we can get it into law and satisfy the state requirements for a budget, I think we need to go forward tonight, so thank you.
Okay, let's vote on this motion. The motion is to approve the compromise budget, restoring $75,000 to the mission and to the Humane Society, and getting that out of building revenue. Everyone clear on the motion? Okay, all in support of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Two of you? Armstrong, Modrick? Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion fails, 8-2. Back to the motion before that, which is to approve tonight's budget, the one that's on the agenda tonight, which includes the recommended mayor's cuts. Everyone clear? Yep. Okay, this motion is to approve the budget as written tonight, which includes, at least for now, the recommended cuts that I sent the council on a letter. All in favor, let's go to roll call vote on that motion.
Laurenti. Drury. Roberts. Scott. Drew. Nordstrom. Modrick. Solomon. Lewis. Armstrong. Motion passes 6-4.
Okay, so that's settled. Thanks for the debate, everyone, and for keeping it relatively civil. I just want to make a couple of statements on this now that we're done voting. I incorrectly believed that the council would initially, in August, view the budget and the building permit proposal separately. Made sense to me, made sense to a couple of staff that I talked to about it. Council did not perceive it that way. They would not consider that separately. So that's what led to the need to, in the middle of the process, reduce another $203,280. I made the offer, because of a motion, to take that all out of Community Planning Department to balance the budget. I made a motion, a request, I should say, to let me go back and choose the areas where we could reduce. These areas were not areas I chose to go through the first $2.4 million in reductions. And just to clarify, keep in context, the reductions of the department heads' 2019 requests. So this whole process starts at the department head level. They assess their departments, their ability to perform services. They do the cost workup on what it will take. They present those numbers to myself, the finance officer. Those are vetted internally before it ever gets to the city council. The budget starts with priority reviews. Gets to a point of comparing numbers, revenue versus expenses. We get all the options on the table. We consider short versus long-term consequences. We do all this hoping to keep it sustainable. At some point, when it gets down to the point where it has gotten, some of these cuts are not logical. They do not follow the priority budgeting principles, because priority budgeting, priority-based budgeting is not meant to slash budgets, it's meant to reprioritize resources. So take money from lower priority programs and put them towards higher priority programs. So in this case, we're cutting money from both high and low. So we really get into a philosophical debate internally and here in public. But the cuts that I recommended, they're going in the books right now for the second reading as I recommended them. I can justify keeping every one of these items, and I did try to keep every one of these items. The council contingency, council didn't even ask me to put that in the budget, but I've seen that having some council contingency money can really help ease us out of a clunky procedural process during some of these meat grinding meetings where we need a study or where we need some undesignated funding. We've given it up the last couple of years at the council's request. I brought it back. Well, we have to take that back. So that's no offense to the council. No one feels sore about that because they probably didn't want it in there anyway. Rapid City Fire Department, that's $50,000, which will result in them having to put off a couple of service vehicle, not fire truck, but service vehicle purchases until the next year. And chose them over the police department because of how well they came out in the first couple of rounds of reductions. They made some sacrifices in the 2018 budget. And so we tried not to duplicate all those in the 2019 budget. And for contrast, the Rapid City Police Department took their request down $650,000. Economic Development Partnership flies directly in the face of our goals as far as economic development. Everything we're working for, it's an illogical reduction. Chamber of Commerce, very small. Cornerstone Rescue Mission, I struggled over this. I turned my stomach to consider this. However, the fact is, we've seen how some of these reductions in past years have fallen upon the council, and we know what the tolerance for some of these reductions are. The Cornerstone Mission was not receiving general fund money prior to 2017, and I felt like I was backed into a corner. And a very small reduction to the Humane Society. So I didn't want to go there, but that's where we've had to go. $2.4 million of reductions for essential city services on top of all of these. So it's not a great year. All right. Ms. Armstrong, 41, please.
Item 41, second reading of ordinance number 6276. An ordinance to amend sections of the Rapid City Municipal Code relating to infested trees and storage of wood. Recommendation is to approve. Motion to approve.
Second by Jason Solomon, I think. All in favor of second reading, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Number 42, first reading of ordinance number 6283, an ordinance regarding supplemental appropriation number 6 for 2018. The recommendation is to approve. Motion to approve.
Okay, second by Laurenti. All in favor of approval?
Aye.
Say aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
And item number 43, first reading ordinance 6274, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, a request by KTM Design Solutions Incorporated for BH Capital LLC for rezoning from general agricultural district to medium-density residential district for property generally described as being located east of Valley Drive and west of Copperfield Vista. The recommendation is to approve in conjunction with preliminary subdivision plan 18PL064. Motion to approve.
Second by Darla Drew. We have a motion and a second for, yes?
I believe that's in conjunction with the preliminary subdivision plan?
Yes.
Should be added to that? Okay, thank you.
Oh, motion, okay, yes. The motion was to approve in conjunction with preliminary subdivision plan 18PL064, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thank you. On to Public Works Committee items, we'll go to Public Works and Community Development items. We'll go to Darla Drew, starting with number 44.
Thank you, Mayor. We request from Independent Truck Repair for a variance to waive the requirement to install sidewalk per city ordinance 12.08.060 along Emerson Drive for the property located at 2333 Emerson Lane. Recommendation from Public Works was to approve 4-1 with Nordstrom voting no. Move to approve.
Second.
Second by Lisa Modrick. And we'll go to Lisa Modrick.
Thank you, Mayor. I hope that this gains support. The Public Works Committee really did go through this process as well as with the owner of the land who's here if there's anybody that has a question. But this is definitely a designated area that is not sidewalk friendly. The crystal ball probably is not going to go there for a long time. It's a sidewalk to nowhere in its present form, and I think it will be for years and years to come. So this is a solid request by Independent Truck Repair to variance this waiver, and I can fully support this as recommended by Public Works. Thank you.
Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to make sure everybody understands where I'm coming from on the rationale for why I'm voting no, Mr. Ritchie, if you take the gamble that you're not putting in a sidewalk, it could be called in later, but in my short experience on the City Council, I don't recall any sidewalks being called in as right now. And you'd be the first one in my memory that would be called in. So the other part of it is that as I see road construction taking place in the future, that would be picked up by the taxpayers. So you can take a gamble on doing the cost right now, which is probably the least expensive point in time to do a sidewalk construction, or you can take the gamble and that it won't be called in or it could be called in. That's another gamble that you would have to be taking, depending upon the cost of that at that time. And as we all know, construction costs are going up annually at a pretty healthy percentage. So you're taking a gamble on whether it's cheaper to do it now or you're going to wind up paying for it in the future. So that's my opinion, and that's where I'm at, is not supporting the waiver of this. I believe we need sidewalks. Thank you.
Okay, motion on the floor is for approval of this item. All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No. No.
Okay, motion carries with 2 noes. Nordstrom Drury. Next item, please.
Item 45, approve Investment Committee's recommendation to Council to cancel Community Development Block Grant CDBG funding for FY 2015, $120,721.56, and FY 2017, $75,000 awarded to Freeland Ranch Hague for non-performance and call the irrevocable letter of credit due for the 2015 funds. This was continued from the August 29th Legal and Finance Committee meeting. I'm going to read the recommendation so we know what we're voting on, and then I guess we'll talk. Okay, recommendation, allow additional time for Freeland Ranch Hague to meet 3 benchmarks. 1, October 1st, 2018, an extension on the irrevocable line of credit for the FY 2015 funds in the amount of $120,000 must be submitted. Number 2, March 10th, 2019, reevaluate to make sure he is making all of the milestones with planning. And 3, May 1st, 2019, funding must be secured and identified. My motion is to approve.
Second by Chad Lewis. We'll go to Steve Laurenti.
Thank you, Mayor. If I may, I'd like to ask Barb Garcia a couple of questions, if I may, please.
Yes.
Thank you. Hi, Barb. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good. Hey, we spoke about this at the Legal and Finance meeting. My questions to you are, is staff and the investment committee, I don't know if they're aware of what we're doing. I assume there's some communication between your staff and the committee on this particular item. Is there comfort factor with that?
I have not spoken to him since Legal and Finance on Wednesday.
Okay.
So I don't know how many of them know of your...
So my next question to you is, how tight is this schedule? You mentioned it, Legal and Finance, but I'd like you to speak a little bit about your, not apprehension, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but can you speak about how tight the timeline has become because of all of the different factors?
I wish that Vicki were here to address the planning side, because that I'm not as up to date on. I am concerned. I do know that construction projects take quite a while, especially once you even start on the buildings. And the time frame that we have with winter in between there, and we often have difficulties getting projects done because of winter weather or rain in the spring that can delay projects. What Vicki did state to Legal and Finance was this is a very tight, with very little wiggle room for anything that went wrong with the project between now and then to accomplish, but it was considered doable. She and several of the others discussed it and thought that it would be doable if everything went right.
So what are we risking if we miss one or two of these deadlines? I mean, what's the ultimate risk here? You spoke a little bit about losing the funds. Is that a permanent situation going forward? If you could talk a little bit about that.
It can be a permanent situation. HUD allows 5 years from the time funds are awarded to a completion that meets their national objective, meaning an occupied house by a low-income family. And so we have 5 years to do that in. We are now, this was 2015 money, so we're already 3 years into it. Our deadline is about July of 2020, that we have to have a finished, completed project with people living in the units. If we don't, the funds have to be paid back to HUD, and that means the city has to pay them back with non-federal dollars to do that. So if we have to pay back money because we didn't accomplish it, they can take that amount of money permanently from our allocation for all future allocations. So where we get, say, $450,000, we would be reduced by the 120 plus the 75 if you are awarding also the 75. That is one of the things we're asking for the direction on here tonight, too.
All right, thank you, Barb. And I just wanted to add that I was one of the people that supported getting the additional $75,000 for this particular project, if you all remember. And so I'm apprehensive, especially for the 2015 funds. Like she said, we've got to have somebody living in one of these homes by 2020. In a home, sold, financed, somebody living in it, or we lose those funds for a deserving project going forward and permanently. So what I would like to see, and I would support, is an amendment to the motion that includes allowing staff to do the non-performance and call the irrevocable letter of credit due for the 2015 funds if any one of the deadlines is missed. So if the first one is missed, the staff can go ahead and execute that irrevocable letter so that we can protect those funds for a project, because they have to be re-awarded to another project and still be done in that 5-year limit. So we are on a very tight line here, and I would like to see, and I would support an amendment that puts staff in control rather than coming back, which is how we have it right now. They'll have to come back if they miss a deadline, and we'd have to say, oh, are we going to give them more time than we're already giving them? I think this is a compromise already allowing these deadlines to, or these different deadlines to occur. So I'm hoping staff, or not staff, but my colleagues will support an amendment that says if any one of the milestones is missed, that staff has the ability to execute the irrevocable letter. I yield.
Richie Nordstrom.
Mr. Lawrence, you've got me thinking about your proposal. I'm going to wait on that to see if somebody else will come up with that proposal. But I just wanted to make some comments to Mr. Hague. Thank you for coming forward for this project. It's a worthwhile project. However, there are some milestones in here. We got the benchmarks lined up, but I want to make sure everybody understands that, for me, that the way I'm reading this is that there's a difference between the benchmarks and the milestones. And if the milestones, as written in the agreement, which I understand that you worked out, Mr. Hague, you worked out with Barb Garcia on this, and probably also with Planning Commission as well, or Planning Department, to come up with these milestones, and want to make sure that if you understand me correctly, that if the milestones are not met, that makes a big red flag coming up for me, and I would be and sadly, I've been looking forward to having this project, but sadly, I would say I'm going to have to pull this funding from you on this project. Would like to see it going forward, but if any one of these milestones, not the benchmarks, but a milestone is not met, then I have some real strong reservations that we need to take action right away. Thank you. Yield.
Jason Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Barb, would you mind approaching the podium once more? Since our last meeting, and we kind of worked through this timeline together, and thank you for your help. Have you anything changed in terms of what these 3 points are? Is all of these factors still in place in terms of dates, in terms of what we're asking for?
Yes, they are still in place. I did have a call from John Way, who Mr. Hague is working with on getting the extension to the irrevocable line of credit. He told me that their board would be meeting next Thursday, which will be before the October 1st deadline. So we should know by next week or no later than October 1st about the first deadline that we have to meet.
Okay. Thank you. And I'll echo Alderman Nordstrom's, and you can have a seat if you want. I'll echo Alderman Nordstrom's comments. I think this is a good project. I hope it happens. I hope it comes to fruition. I hope you're able to meet these deadlines. I would support Alderman Laurenti's motion that basically makes sure that each of these steps are followed and that we authorize staff to pool the funds, because I don't want to, like I've mentioned to you at the committee meeting, I don't want to mess around with these federal funds, and I don't think you do either. So, it shouldn't matter to you. You're going to be aggressive on hitting these timelines, but I would support that because I want to see this happen. But at the same time, I do not at all want to jeopardize losing these funds for this or future projects. And so I think that's the concern that I have. That's what is behind this recommendation that we put together, and I certainly would. Again, support that motion. I'm sorry I didn't think to make it, but just to make sure that it's hit. And I think everybody has a stake, including Mr. Hague, to make sure that those milestones and benchmarks are hit. So I would support that motion, and I'll yield.
Becky Drury.
So I'll take a stab at amending the motion to include that if any of the benchmarks are missed, that staff or the community development block grant staff would then cancel the fiscal year 2015, fiscal year 2017 funding from the Freeland Ranch or Hague development.
Okay, second to the budget amendment by Laurenti.
And I yield.
Point of clarification, Mayor?
Yep.
Please, thank you. So I'm just asking because Alderman Laurenti had made the phrase or used the words that staff may. And Alderwoman Drury, I appreciate your motion because I think I heard you say staff will. Is that the clarification, or is that the motion that's on the floor?
Exactly. The intent is that if any of the three are missed, staff will just revoke it.
Thank you.
Is that clear to the seconder? It is. Okay. John Roberts.
I didn't even realize I was in the queue, but I guess I get to talk.
Don't have to.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It looks like Mr. Haig would like to say something. He walked up there, so I don't know what question to ask you, but I'm guessing you want to chime in if you'd like to. Go ahead. I've only got 5 minutes, though, so you can only have 3.
Thank you, Councilman Roberts. I'm here to tell you that we have agreed to these criteria. We suggested these criteria. The only criteria that I have any reservation on, because I can't control the bank board of Bank West, is the exact date of October 1. I'm told by the bank president, John Way, who's also contacted Barb Garcia, letting her know that they will be considering this. It's not even new credit, it's just an extension of existing credit, the irrevocable letter of credit. So my only exception or criteria would be is lacking adequate assurance that Bank West will do it, because whether they hear it next week, which I was told by John Way today, it won't be, he found out it's not going to be on their bank board agenda next week, it's going to be the 1 week after. Well, now we're right in front of October 1. And if there's any delay there, or they don't get to it there, and I've dealt with this bank board many times, very good bank board, tremendous people to deal with, but not always as timely as one would like. So I would ask a bit of indulgence on whether the criteria for number 1, being the first letter of credit by October 1st, be given some leeway to the extent that there be adequate assurance given by the president of the bank himself that it is on its way. Now, this is reminding all that the current letter of credit is in full force and effect until February 2nd, or excuse me, until February of next year, of 2019. So it's not like the city is unprotected. And also, as a point of clarification, although the city, as the recipient of federal funds, is the party responsible for paying it back if goals are not met, they are secured by our personal guarantee in our irrevocable letter of credit. So those funds will always be made available. And I realize the importance of that to make this happen. As with TIFs, we're putting our money on the bottom line here and our signature on the bottom line to try to assure this project goes forward. We're going to be out 120 grand if this thing doesn't fly, and we're going to be out 75,000 if this thing doesn't fly. So that would be the only criteria I'd say on this motion, but I do have other things to say.
Question for you, Mr. Haig. This could be amended pretty easily. How have you had any notion from the bank of how long you think it could possibly be?
I'm told they'll be considering it for sure not this next Thursday, 1 week.
So if someone would make we would change this motion and give you until the 15th of October, would that be enough time?
It better be. Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
So, but I mean, because I would hate to have that letter sitting there on somebody's desk,
right,
and you get it the second, and we make this so tight that we just pull it. So I think that if somebody would come in and make that motion to give him a couple more weeks on this first benchmark, I would definitely support the rest of it. So thank you.
Lisa Modrick.
Thank you, Mayor. So in the end here, time is of the essence. So the statement was just made, and I don't think I realized that part, but there's a personal guarantee as well as the February 2019 date. So, Barb, can you tell me, is that satisfactory? Because that personal guarantee is dollars. So where are we at on that? And then I'll have another question after that for you.
The October 1 date was chosen because it has been such a long time from when he initially was going to provide us with the letter of credit. both for the $75,000 and for the extension. And so we have not executed a contract with him yet for the $75,000 because that was contingent on having the extension of the other one. We didn't want to pay for more studies if the project's not going to go through. So that's why we set the October 1. Having said that, if John Way or the bank lets me know that it would be going to their board on a certain date, then I am fine with giving, another week or a couple weeks to allow for that, but I would want verification from Mr. Way that they will actually consider it at that meeting. And as long as the bank is actively working on it, I am okay with the leeway time.
So Barb, this is telling me that October 1st that was recommended by committee is a hard date that isn't necessarily a date that needs to be hard at this point. We've still got room in here to salvage this project, which is what it's all about. We want to salvage it. We don't want to can it. It's necessary. We need the 24 units. We needed them yesterday, so we would like to see this get built. So with that, with time of the essence, is staff prepared, is planning prepared, is everybody prepared so that when this hits, because we don't want to lose our funding if we lose it, that time is of the essence works all the way across the board, not just from our client, but also on our side. So if it goes till October 15, if you say there's some leadway here, and we've picked a hard number that shouldn't be there, and we fixed that number, are we ready to do what we need to do when they bring it forward?
We are. We're set to go, but we can't move forward without the plan and all of the finals on it. We just do still have to accomplish an environmental review on whatever the actual project is for it to go forward, and that does take a little bit of time too. He had from November 2017, it took until June to get the letter of credit on the $75,000. What we wanted with that hard date was we can't afford for it to keep dragging on month after month of not getting it at this point, because we are down now to a wire. And if he doesn't get started on it and have that funding in place, there's no way he will make the deadline of 2020. It'll be very difficult. So another 2 weeks for it to go through the board, I'm fine with.
So is Exhibit C that we were presented earlier with the 12 and 12 units then, is this, on the original, I think it was commercial, right? So is this ready to go on the 12 and 12? Or we have nothing on this either? Do you have this?
He presented that to me just this last week, but
okay.
It still has to go through the planning department. There does have to be a zoning change on it, and there are some other things in their department, and Ken might want to speak to that.
Thank you, because that was my next, and I've got just enough time, Ken, for you to answer what you need to. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, so if we do grant an additional 2 weeks here into October, it's not going to give him any additional time to meet the planning deadlines that will fall in line to meet the additional number 2 and number 3 deadlines that we have. So it may put a little bit of additional crunch on his end to meet those deadlines. It's, again, doable, but if anything goes wrong, weather, there's a lot of things that can come into play. So it's just putting more crunch on his end.
Ed Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to extend the first deadline to October 15th, and keep the other 2 deadlines in place.
Okay, second by Armstrong.
Change the floor. I
Point
guess
of clarification, sorry. Is that still with the stipulation that staff will pull if these are not met?
if you wish, I'll speak to that in a moment, but go ahead. That's fine.
Thank you.
First of all, to that point, I don't think that it makes a difference if we have that stipulation on there or not, because if he doesn't meet these deadlines, the project's dead. So it doesn't really matter. And they're going to pull whatever they need to pull, and I think that was kind of just unnecessary, to be my personal opinion. I mean, but anyway, it's in there, so that's fine. I'm not going to argue about the point of that. However, I will say that, you know, having dealt with lines of credit before and bank boards, they move about a more glacial pace than government sometimes. So I think the extra 2 weeks is appropriate. it doesn't jeopardize our funding at all. It just gives him a little more time to deal with bureaucracy that does not move it, like I said, as quick as the general public would like them to, or builders or developers or anybody else would like them to move. Boards from banks are notoriously conservative, and that bank also is based in Pierre, if I missed my guess. So they have to meet regionally. They don't meet locally, as I understand it.
That's correct.
And so they have to travel there, yada, yada, yada. So it's not a really quick process. So give them the extra 2 weeks, I think is not a bad idea. Make sure that this gets forward, and I think the rest of it's pretty cut and dried. Everybody knows what's going on. There's not any big surprises here. Best of luck, Mr. Haig. I hope you do make this project work. It's obviously a great project that can go forward. These are tight deadlines, but you're a big boy. You've done this before, so I'm confident that the city's protected with this agreement, and you've got some ability to move forward. So I appreciate your efforts, and I appreciate the staff's efforts to work with them, and hopefully we'll get this going. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so for clarification, now the motion is to approve with strict adherence to the stipulations, with the exception of now we're changing October 1 to October 15th, and that if these deadlines pass, then to direct staff to revoke the line of credit, and that's it. Correct? Okay, Becky Drury.
Thank you, Mayor. And just so everyone here is clear, and I agree, we can go ahead and go out to the 15th. But at the Legal and Finance meeting the other day, Mr. Haig already agreed to October 1st. And I just don't want this to keep coming back for another 2 weeks and another 2 weeks and another 2 weeks, because the investment committee already recommended revoking these, period, and weren't really out there to give another chance because there had been so many deadlines that had already been missed. So I'm just saying, let's just stick with it and be done. I yield.
Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just looking at the milestones page here on documents. So I'm a little uncomfortable about moving this back another 2 weeks because he's got to get grading permit done before October 15th. In fact, it's set for October 10th. So that moves everything on the milestones back by approximately 2 weeks as well. So I'm not comfortable with this. So. Doesn't? It doesn't? No. Okay. No. So if I can ask Mr. Young a question?
Yes.
Mr. Young, could you clarify these milestones? Are you up to speed on this document with the milestones on it? And I'm just concerned that using the engineering plan, 8 to 10 weeks to get that done, are you still comfortable with that?
Well, I have to admit I'm slightly uncomfortable with it because reality says that projects always have something that comes down the line that will slow it down. Is it doable? Again, yes, we've already said it's doable. Is it realistic? That's another question. And my opinion is we will be congratulating him if he does actually meet all of these milestones. But should he have the opportunity to prove that? Sure.
Okay. Thank you. I will yield.
Darla Drew.
Thank you, Mayor. I am going to support the move to the date of October 15th to give you that extension to work with your bank. All the onus is on you after that. So, all those deadlines, milestones, all those things, and I hope that you can go forward with this project. It is a good project, and you have put a lot of time and money into it. I'd like to see it go forward. So I'm going to go ahead and vote for this October 15th change. Thank you.
Okay, everyone understand the motion with the stipulation change of October 15th and directing staff to call this in? Okay, all in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay.
You're denying me my Spartacus moment, maybe. I don't know.
Spartacus moment.
Well, I do want to say that in no way do I intend to be held back by waiting for the bank board to do something. We're going to proceed this week. I've already got calls into folks in engineering, and Vicky's already been very helpful with offering courtesy reviews and so forth with the designs and so forth to expedite the process. Again, public-private partnership. I request and offer and look forward to working together with staff and the city to get this thing to really grow some legs. And
You're
move
done
forward.
now, Mr. Kent. You've got work to do.
Oh, no, I must go on. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item.
Okay, a request by KTM Design Solutions, Inc. for BH Capital LLC for preliminary subdivision plan for proposed lots A and B of Diamond Ridge subdivision, generally described as being located east of Valley Drive and west of Copperfield Vista. A recommendation to approve with stipulation. Move to approve.
Second.
Second by Nordstrom. All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
47, a request by KTM Design Solutions, Inc. for Dakota Heartland, Inc. for a preliminary subdivision plan for proposed lots 4 through 6 of Block 5 and lots 1 through 2 of Block 6 of Big Sky Business Park, generally described as being located lying north of the terminus of DeGeese Drive. Recommendation approved with stipulations, and I move to approve.
Second by Lisa Modrick. All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Public hearing items 48 through 51, no speaker requests here, so no public comment period. Consent public hearing items 48, 49. Does council want to take both of these at once?
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Scott, second by Drury and Laurenti. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Non-consent public hearing items, item 50, second reading ordinance 6275, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. A request by Fisk Land Surveying and Consulting Engineers for Dr. Dale Anderson for a rezoning from light industrial district to office commercial district for property generally described as being located at 1622 and 1636 Concourse Court.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Drew and second by Armstrong. All in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Item 51, resolution number 2018-060, a request by KTM Design Solutions for Eugene and Levine Bolton Family Trust for a vacation of right-of-way for property generally described as being located at 1122 Franklin Street.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Drew and second by Armstrong. All in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Bill list number 52, we'll go to Pauline Sumption.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are no additions to the bill list, so the total is that which is attached at $6,174,257.57.
Second.
Motion to approve by Laurenti and a second by Solomon. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Scott, second by Armstrong. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. We are adjourned.